And Saturday, I have another one. Yep.
Morning, everyone. We're going to start our June Economic Growth and Development Committee meeting. It's 11:06 on June 24th, 2025. Our first action is seeking a motion to approve last meeting's minutes. We got a first by Mr. Bean and a second by Mr. Wild. Any discussion about the minutes? I'll call the question. All in favor of approving May's committee meeting minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. Any public comment?
On any cast.
Seeing none, we'll move into the action agenda for workforce development. Request A is a resolution new agreement with BOCES related to the youth GED class September through June.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everybody. Happy to answer any questions, but this is pretty standard agreement for the fall. We are on a school year schedule with BOCES. So we just finished our BOCES class last week for this year, and this contract is for next year. The cost is about the same, and it comes out of our federal WIOA funds. We did have a couple youth recently pass their GED test and 2 more testing today. So very happy with our partnership with BOCES. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the committee? Can I get a motion to bring this to the floor? First by Supervisor Stroh, a second by Supervisor Bean. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor of approving this resolution request, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Request B is to reappoint Elizabeth Miller to the Saratoga Warren Washington Workforce Development Board for another 3-year term. First by Mr. Wild. And second by Mr. Cressito. Any discussion about that? She's a significant employer and a real property owner, leader. I'll call the question. All in favor of reappointing Elizabeth Miller, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. Going into resolution request C for budget amendment to receive the temporary assistance for needy families allocation that funds the summer youth employment program. First by Mr. Bean and a second by Mr. Wild. Any discussion about that? I'll call the question. All in favor of that resolution request C, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries into resolution request D to transfer funds within the county workforce development department allocation. Liza?
Sure. So as you recall, Warren County has graciously provided $100,000 to workforce development for the last 3 years. And we just need to move some of those funds around. With your permission, Amanda would be able to do so to help cover some of the costs of our summer interns, some of whom are working for county offices this summer, which is wonderful.
What page does that start on, Liza? I don't see page numbers, so.
Yeah, I'm sorry, there aren't page numbers. So
So a transfer of
it's just the transfer.
4,200 for part-time salaries, 3,000 to part-time salaries, 1,500 to part-time salaries
Yes.
from telephone, travel, education, conference, and retirees hospitalization. First by Mr. Stroh, question.
No, I'll move it.
They moved, second by Mr. Bean. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Go into resolution request E, which is to create a reserve for the Warren County staff development from any remaining funds of the workforce development annual allocation.
So we thought this would be a good idea with the 100,000 that we receive every year. And if that continues, if there's any remaining funds, I think we had around 10,000 from 2024. We would love to put that in a staff development reserve, which would save county departments money. It would upskill Warren County workers, and it would go through the same process that any other staff development or training goes through with workforce development. Since that money's been allocated, we would just like to be able to use it past the calendar year if there's any remaining funds, and use it for Warren County employees.
So it could be staff development from a completely different department.
Exactly.
How does the committee feel about this?
Anytime you can further educate your staff, I think it's a great idea.
Do you want to put a cap on it? Not to exceed any remaining funds of something?
Will this go to finance?
Also,
Not from,
I'll bring that motion forward if it hasn't been done.
by Supervisor Wild and a second by Supervisor Bean.
Yep.
The further discussion.
finance, I guess.
I'll call the question. All in favor of this resolution request E to create a reserve from any leftover Workforce Development Department annual allocation of its 100,000, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. Going into F to request to update allocations with partners Southern Adirondack Child Care Network and Brightside Up to allow for more flexibility with their spending. Isaac?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You may recall, we were awarded a federal grant, a community project grant about 3 years ago to start home-based childcare provider businesses in Saratoga and Warren counties. And we work with Southern Adirondack Child Care Network for Warren County and Brightside Up for Saratoga County. We have successfully been able to start already 10 in Saratoga County, 1 in Warren County, and 3 more in Warren County that are in training right now. We have a year left to spend this money, and the federal officer for our grant showed us that we have the flexibility to move our remaining funds around. We're not going to use our county allocations that were originally in the contract. We thought we would need $16,000 for online learning. We've already paid for that from other funding. So we would like both Brightside Up and Southern Adirondack Child Care Network to still be able to use more funding to get these startups going in our last year of this grant. So the request is just for our attorney's office to update our agreements with Southern Adirondack Child Care Network and Brightside Up so that they can both now spend up to $102,000 each in the categories you have on the last page of your packet.
I'll bring that motion forward.
First by Mr. Wild and a second by Mr. Stroud.
I have just one question. Liza, the potential 3 that we're going to have in Warren County, where are they?
I can get you that information. I know we had at least 1 in Glens Falls. And I don't want to misspeak, so I don't want to say the other 2 towns, but I can get you that for who's in training right now.
They're across the county. They're not.
They're in
just
Warren County.
Falls.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. And we've had other people go through training and then maybe fall through because they don't meet the safety requirements of their space or other regulations. Saratoga County's had a little bit more success, or a lot more success, because it's a larger population. But we're going to be doing interviews and more marketing campaigns to try to recruit more Warren County people, whether they're stay-at-home parents, educators who are tired of being in education, or unlicensed childcare providers. We want to get them the training and the formal licensure. So that is who we're targeting to increase our numbers in Warren County. And moving some of this funding around allows us to do that a little bit more.
So what's the potential uptick in?
Yep. So our goal for the project was 20 home-based providers. We're going to exceed that goal.
Not Warren County.
Not in Warren County, but total, we will exceed that goal. And we've also asked Saratoga County to focus on northern Saratoga County, South Glens Falls, so that any Warren County residents could also have access to any new providers in South Glens Falls.
We expect to get any more than 3?
Yes, I will confidently say that, yes.
Okay. Right.
Other questions? You have a first and a second, and I'll call the question. All in favor of resolution request F, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Brings us into general updates.
Thank you. So the May unemployment rate numbers should be coming out probably this afternoon, like they did last month, right after our committee meeting. So I'll send those out. So we still only have the April numbers. So we were at 3.4% for Warren County, Historically goes down in the spring and summer, comes back up in the winter. We're not seeing anything different so far. We still have plenty of jobs. We're still getting a lot of youth into the workforce. And we're not seeing concerns right now with our businesses besides, you know, some of the international students that weren't able to make it over. So our unemployment rate is still low, and as soon as the May numbers are released this month, this week, I will forward them on. Summer Youth Employment Program is starting next week with orientation. And some of those students are also enrolled in our GED class. We have youth again this summer at municipalities, private sector, as well as nonprofits. Some returning work sites and some new work sites, which is good. And we still have our summer job coach, a new summer job coach to support youth with disabilities who are in our summer youth employment program. Our numbers are down a little bit in summer youth employment, and it's consistent with what we're seeing with other counties as well, as many families are just in crisis and planning day to day and can't think long term in terms of what their summer looks like. So usually we have about 35 youth, and this summer we'll have about 25 youth. So it's a little bit down, but we're excited about the youth that we have and our orientation next week with them. We wrapped up our GED class last week, as I mentioned. And one of the people that passed their GED recently, she is working, and she just toured SUNY Adirondack last week and is planning to enroll. So these are the kinds of stories that we like to highlight so that people know about our free services and programs to help people finish their education, take advantage of other educational resources in our community, and have the support from our staff to help them find employment, whether it's short-term for the summer or long-term. We are also working closely still with a lot of the school districts as they're wrapping up. Many of our school districts are doing amazing career and technical education themselves, not to replace what BOCES is doing, but to complement it and to give more opportunities for young people. And long-term, my goal is to get more career camps in the summer occurring in our communities. So you may have heard there's a Girls in the Trades camp that we work with Curtis Lumber and Northeast Workforce Trades Coalition Committee, as well as there's a healthcare camp called MASH that happens at Glens Falls Hospital. And we want there to be more camp opportunities. There aren't enough camps, affordable or free camps for kids in our communities, and we know it keeps them safe, exposes them to new industries, as well as more adult role models. So long-term, we're going to be working on some of that. I have brand new youth counselor staff, so I'm getting their feet wet still. Those are my main updates for what's going on with the workforce, but I'm happy to answer any questions for what we're seeing with trends and patterns and concerns.
Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Liza, some time ago, we used to have an update on open jobs, how long they're open, and what segment is in the most trouble. Could we continue to pursue that
Sure.
in next meetings?
Sure, happy to provide that.
Just give us a sense of what's happening
Yeah.
and how we might help focus.
Yeah. We print out job postings every week in our office for the public job seekers, and they're available for them to take. We see the same industries: healthcare, manufacturing, hospitality, tourism. Those are our biggest employers. That's where we continue to see the most jobs month to month. But I am happy to share out numbers if the committee's interested. And still a lot of boomers retiring, so we have to make sure that we're recruiting and retaining our younger workforce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep. What else? Liza and I attended a event at Queensbury High School a couple weeks ago for CTE, and it was amazing to see probably 15 teachers each toss the ball back and forth about what they're doing, from forestry to electrical, welding, and everything in between. Liza was the only non-teacher there who was asked to present, and presenting on obviously what the Workforce Development Department's doing with career and technical training. So it's good to see, and very obvious you have a strong pipeline through that leadership portal. Any public comment before we move into planning department? All right, thank you, Liza. We can start our planning and community development agenda. Request one is an authorization to enter into a new contract. Did we select that you had down to two, or you had two respondents to your RFP, for RFP 3125?
Yeah, there were a couple clarifying questions, but we anticipate that should be selected by the end of the day. We're following all county and state procurement standards on this one.
So,
Yeah, so the anticipation was, we had, not to get too far into the weeds, but we assist the Scroon Lake communities with their aquatic invasive species management, really important for water quality. And we help manage them access their milfoil harvesters. They do a very particular method of managing Eurasian milfoil. They hand harvest. So previous bid was no respondents. This bid, we got 2 respondents, and they're very similar to one another. So we're working with the stakeholders on the local committee to help go through the evaluation criteria and make the selection. But we're working closely with the purchasing department on this one.
is it for harvesting in Essex County communities too, or just the one?
Yes, yeah, we have an MOU that includes town of Horicon, town of Chester, and town of Scroon. And they pay a proportionate amount of these contracts based on the amount of shoreline that they have in their municipality.
So are we seeking authorization today for a contractor we haven't selected, but are confident in who will be
Correct.
selected?
Yeah, we received 2 qualified respondents on this one. We're just parsing through some of the finer details of their proposals.
Somebody want to make a motion to bring that to the floor? First by Mr. Bean and second by Mr. Stroud. Discussion on that. Mr. Cressida.
So they hand harvest all of it. And has a park commission been involved at all? Have they ever looked at Priscilla Cardone?
No, they're at a different management level, not to
Okay.
get too geeked out, but they've done a very good job on managing it. So now it's a very selective hand harvesting. In other circumstances, it could be use of herbicides or boats to harvest it, like Saratoga Lake or something like that. But they're in a good spot, so it's a relatively light touch.
They are, okay.
Yeah.
Your questions? I'll call the question. All in favor of authorizing to enter into a new contract with a contractor to be determined, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Go into, that carries. We'll go into number 2, enter into a state and local agreement with the New York State DOT related to multi-use trail crossings and their safety improvements. Am I on the wrong agenda?
No, you're on the proper agenda. I would note that we have the sample agreement included in the agenda packet. So I'll give a little background on this one. Back in 2021, our department, using federal funds and local match and some county occupancy tax dollars, commissioned safety and connectivity study, the Warren County Bikeway Feeder Canal Trail. At the end of 2024, we applied for a competitive grant called Make the Connection, which would do safety improvements on the bikeway. And we picked out 5 different road crossings that the engineering firm had deemed as higher risk. There's a lot of public engagement that went into it. It was a good opportunity to get federal, state dollars to make improvements to county infrastructure. The 20% local share of that was actually picked up through another Department of Transportation program, which means that Warren County has to pay $0 to get a $500,000 improvement to our infrastructure. It's a bit of an administrative burden, but this is what we're here for to do. And so the sample agreement that we have in front of us today just outlines that this is the project DOT is going to be funded through the Marshall program. And then the 20% non-federal share is going to be coming through the New York State Department of Transportation's Pedestrian Safety Action Plan. And that we will be, like all these federal aid projects, responsible for the first instance of $89,000 for the design work for this, and then be reimbursed by the state. So this is the we need to enter this agreement so we can formalize our arrangement with the DOT and start proceeding with the project. We don't anticipate this project to be shovels in the ground this year, more likely to be next year. So that's what you have in front of you today.
And Ethan, the 89,000 we pay out of pocket and then we'll be reimbursed by the Adirondack.
Yeah, it'd be through the DOT. Yeah, and the AGFTC has been extremely helpful with connecting us to these resources and pointing us to the right direction with the DOT so that we can navigate this fairly complex process. But yes, we as a county will be putting the money forward and then reimbursed.
First by Supervisor Stroh, a second by Supervisor Turner. Ethan, what are the locations?
David, the exact locations?
Let's see, there's Sanford Road, Ridge Road, Bay, Glen Lake. This one, I want to say Country Club Road.
Any other questions from the committee? Sounds like a great deal. I'll call the question. All in favor of approving request number 2, please say aye. Opposed? Carries. County Administrator is going to introduce number 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Number 3, some of you were here at the Public Works Committee where we discussed applying for a grant to do a study on the rail line. And I did that probably, as Amanda reminded me that I should not have in the discussion items, but realized we should have probably talked about it with the Public Works Committee and the Railroad Committee before. Ethan and I and all of the folks in planning have been talking about the rail line since the comp plan discussions and since the outdoor recreation survey came out. So what we would like this committee to do today is approve just the ability for planning to apply for this grant. And then we'll have a follow-on discussion with the Public Works Committee and Parks Rec and Railroad about what we study and in terms of the rail line. But because of the deadlines with Empire State Development, if we wait another month to get approval to apply for the grant, we'll probably miss all the deadlines. So if it's okay with this committee, we would like to have support to apply for the grant. So it's just applying for the grant. Yeah. And that's correct, right, Ethan?
Yeah, that's correct. It's through the Empire State Development Strategic Planning Grant. It's capped at $100,000 maximum, requiring a 50% match. And as Administrator Taflin noted, this is a topic that we've been talking about for a long time. The Warren County Railway, it's an awesome asset. It's being used really well right now, but in 5 years from now, we want to figure out what our future options are and what the financial liability is for the county. How do we continue to use it as a great tourism asset without it being too much of a burden on Warren County taxpayers?
Chairman, if I could. So if it's awarded, you'll come back to committee for approval to accept the grant.
You have to.
That's fine. Yeah. Yeah. It's obviously, yeah, pending the discussions with the appropriate committees. Yeah. Okay. And so I actually have a whole slate of other projects I'd
Yeah,
like
let's
to talk
bring this,
about.
somebody make a motion to bring this to the floor, which is not just that grant, but many others through the CFA, a first by Mr. Stroh and a second by Mr. Bean. Sorry, I didn't see the hands. Go ahead, Ethan. You had probably 10 or 12 different grants you wanted to highlight.
Yes, thank you. So, a lot of our municipalities get our funding through the consolidated funding application process. The state releases the resources, and then we have, 2 months to go and study and evaluate our options. Jim and EDC hosted a really nice overview from Empire State Development a couple weeks ago. So what we've done is, review our capital project inventory, comprehensive plans, and our local planning documents to understand, how to best target our county priorities with these resources. So this year, we're going to be doing a variety of different grants. Some are through municipalities. So we're partnering with like Town of Johnsburg, for example. Does not necessarily require county approval. We'll work with our municipal sponsors on those ones, but we do have a handful that are strictly county projects. So So I'm just going to run down the list. Town of Johnsburg is a bit of a focused area for us based on a lot of the trends that we're seeing with the wastewater treatment plant, but we are going to be assisting them with applying for funding for a zoning update. They just adopted a comprehensive plan. If they want to take advantage of all the investment in wastewater treatment plant, we have to have the appropriate zoning regulations in place so they can maximize that land value now. Additionally, we're taking a closer look at their water infrastructure. We're going to be going after community development block grant funds to see, now we have a wastewater treatment plant that's funded. Let's take a look at the other complementary infrastructure that we need to support housing and commercial development. The other, so those are a couple municipal projects, more specifically for county approval. This is related to the multi-use trail modernization connectivity study. New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, Historic Preservation every few years releases the Recreational Trails Program. We'd like to apply for a $275,000 project to do trailhead improvements and wayfinding, which is signage along our bikeway. This would require a $75,000 match from the county. And this would really be implementing portions of the multi-use trail modernization connectivity study. The deadline for that is July 31st. Other county projects, we're going to be working to update the First Wilderness Heritage Corridor study. I think, as you all know, we've successfully used that planning apparatus to pull in about $20 million over 2 decades into Warren County. New York State has been really focusing on resiliency and sustainability in their funding for the past few years, and we anticipate that they will with the Mother Nature Bond Act. So we'd like to request from the state $200,000 to update the First Wilderness Heritage Corridor. All of these planned projects and these concept projects, to actually update them to make them real. We do enhanced, engineering, landscape architecture to turn these great concepts into shovel-ready projects. The funding agency for the local waterfront revitalization program, the Department of State, has indicated very clearly that their purpose in this round of funding is to take all these great concepts and actually make them shovel-ready so we can take advantage of that $4.2 billion in Bond Act funds. They were extremely clear about that was their purpose of this funding round, so we'd like to take advantage of that and leverage our existing plans. Another municipal project that we're going to be revisiting was the planned unit development in the town of Lake George, sort of a town and village of Lake George project in which there's a fairly substantial housing development proposed, and they need some support for infrastructure, water and sewer expansion to serve that area. As a committee, we had sort of foregone the option to go after the county infrastructure grant program in favor of North Creek's wastewater treatment facility. So now we are thinking we can use the pro housing infrastructure program through Empire State Development. So we'll be working with the town and village on that. The applicant, we've been in the process so far.
I appreciate that.
And that would be really great for housing. They're both pro housing communities, strong needs, supports everything in our housing study. Another one of our big emphasis areas this year is supporting one of the biggest county-owned piece of infrastructure are culverts. I think every year we see ourselves doing emergency repairs to the tune of a lot. I won't say the numbers, but through the work that the Regional Planning Board did to inventory and assess all the culverts that are owned by the county, and Sarah and her team did a lot of work with DPW to take this, 1,800 culverts and turn that into a short list of about 40 high priority culverts that need to be improved. So now the DEC has the Water Quality Improvement Program, and this allows for funding for resiliency projects and stormwater projects. And we would like to start tackling that list of 30 plus priority culverts that the county owns, so that we can prevent these, $1 million emergency repairs that might need to be made if we don't address these. The nice part about this is that the Board of Supervisors already authorized a $10 million bond for culverts, having recognized this need. So we, in conversation with Kevin Hajos, we can use that bond to support the matching funds to do this culvert work. So we anticipate one, possibly two different DEC grants for the culverts. One will be for actually making physical improvements, and another could possibly be for more detailed design and engineering work on a handful of the culverts as well. The intent being that we can use the water quality improvement program this year, tackle some of the physical upgrades on the culverts that are the highest priority, do some of the planning work, and then next year, ideally, we'll have others in the queue where we can leverage, more of this bond funding that we already have set aside and take those state resources and basically double the value of our money. On that same note of culverts, we have this is a bit of a discussion. I spoke to the committee chair about this concept, and this is something that's come up in various discussions around the comprehensive plan, how we could support some of our smaller municipalities manage their infrastructure a little bit better. So in the same way that the county did a detailed inventory and assessment of all of our culverts so that we can prevent big catastrophic blowouts, what I'm proposing is using the Climate Smart Communities program to support our municipalities in evaluating, I would say, inventory and assess their high priority culverts. So we'd have one database of municipal culverts that we could help our communities address their highest priority culverts to prevent emergency blowouts in the future. We've done some preliminary scoping of this project, and I think we realized pretty quickly that we can't do every single municipally owned culvert in Warren County in one pass. And our preliminary approach to this is to overlay the hazard mitigation plan that was developed over the course of a few years, and then also some updated FEMA flood maps to figure out, to sort of narrow down the body of municipally owned culverts that we'd be looking at. This would really be kickstarting municipal, like, long-term planning efforts to get in front of these things. But we do know that storms are more frequent and they're more intense. And from a county perspective, if someone's accessing a job or a hospital or they're visiting an area, they don't particularly care who owns the road. They're more interested in just getting from point A to point B. The tricky, I guess I would say the ask, and maybe this is the point of discussion for the committee here, is that I'm asking for $75,000 in county resources due to timing considerations to support a 50-50 match that would let this project move forward. Now, this is not for county infrastructure particularly. So it would be a $150,000 project, a 50-50 match. We'd be going through the Climate Smart Communities program, and we would be doing an assessment and inventory of high priority culverts across our municipalities in Warren County. And again, this is a stretch. Normally, I think the expectation is that some of the municipal governments would have their funding in place as match for this one. Due to some of the timing considerations, we don't have that ability to do right now. Not to say it couldn't happen. So I get the question on this one. This is a conversation that's embedded into a larger resolution, is would this committee entertain a project of this nature, in which the county supports municipalities in an inventory and assessment of culverts?
We don't have time to go back to the municipalities and see if they would contribute.
We could, before we submit the application, I think we could still reach out. But what I'd like to do is have this approved by this committee. So as a backstop, there's nothing preventing us from going out and reaching individual municipalities, whether it's Stony Creek, Thurman, everyone else, and requesting a proportionate share of this $75,000 match.
Mr. Stroh.
Yeah, what I'm noticing is, well, certainly, like Ethan brings up, a need for a study. The study needs to be comprehensive. I mean, we've got private culverts, we've got county, we've got state, you got town, village, whatever. And some of the culverts have been approved to bridges and DEC's new 1.25 standards. Which means that during a rain event, there'll be greater flows under the 1.25 standard bridges, replacing the culverts. A lot of your culverts are getting replaced with bridges. So now you've increased the flow downstream. Where you have old culverts, now you've increased the likelihood of a blowout of those culverts. So the study of the culverts needs to encompass everybody because they're all interrelated. And what I'm seeing is it's being done piecemeal. Once we get a heavy rain event, you'll certainly discover the failures. But it'd be nice not to discover the failures. It'd be nice to start planning this so that we have a sequence of flow that's not going to burden an older culvert system to the point of a blowout. So anything that we can do for culverts, like Ethan's suggesting, I would support. But keeping in mind, we need to be comprehensive about this. Needs to look at all of them and how they're interrelated and so forth. So just my thoughts.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. My sense is that, we could use the $75,000 as an incentive to move forward, but if it's approved, the towns and the municipalities have to come up with that match.
Yeah, I agree with
It's not
that.
a county, it's not a
Right.
county project, but we
Right.
can support the municipalities. So,
Yep.
of
Countywide.
course,
Yeah.
Queensbury will have, 80,000 of that 75,000 too.
Well, and Queensbury needs to be in that picture too, yeah.
Yeah, and everyone's at different stages of planning. I'd anticipate, Sarah works pretty closely with a lot of the GIS and DPW supervisors, and I would imagine that Queensbury is in a different shape than Stony Creek in terms of what level of assessment they have on it. But we really, in some of the conversations with folks, there's often a lot of gray area with how many culverts are out there. This is the first step.
Is that the last part of your discussion?
No,
See if
so on that topic, yes, there's a few other municipal support projects that we're exploring, including partnerships with the Feeder Canal Alliance, and possibly some other folks in Glens Falls. Additionally, we are starting to investigate the prospects of a project that had originally been proposed in some way back in 2022. I think Jim with EDC and Beth Gillis with the Regional Planning Board had wanted to support Finch as part of the Build Back Better bill, I believe. So this year, we're actually looking at opportunities to further support Finch and sort of nothing to the scale that had been proposed during the Build Back Better conversation. I think that was millions and millions of dollars, $50 million. We're looking at a smaller scale project that basically using the DEC's Climate Smart Communities program to enter into a conversation with Finch and say, in recognition of their outsized role that they play in the local economy, but then also from a climate perspective, they fill a really important role with maintaining working forests. The amount of demand that the pulp mill has, and it's constantly keeping these sustainably forest lands, in private hands, being managed, and then creating employment and bringing that product to Glens Falls and creating an export commodity. So what our proposal is, and we're in early stage of conversation with them, it's probably a little bit too early to be talking about it, would be find a way to partner with them with the Climate Smart Communities program to get their foot in the door for access to other state funding through DEC, Empire State Development, and New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. Matthew Smith, who was here earlier, has done extensive research into how other paper mills across the state have taken advantage of similar state programs. Very early, and I don't need specific approvals aside from the blanket authorization to submit CFA on this topic. We would be working with some other partners on finding the matching funds for that. Sorry for the long list of grant opportunities that we're tracking, but I will say that it's a shifting environment and it's pretty fast moving, but that's our first pass. In addition to the ones I mentioned, we're also going to be following up on some of our housing study recommendations and pursuing community development block grant funds in the fall. They have a different application cycle. And you'll see on the updated agenda, item 5 and 6, not to confuse things too much. Those are additional housing rehabilitation grants that we're requesting approval to submit for. So that's the rundown of grants. So again, sorry for the long sort of confusing explanation of things.
Sure.
Just circling back, the motion that we have on the floor that was made by Mr. Stroh and seconded by Mr. Bean would authorize the planning department to submit a CFA application for several different projects, and then the planning department will come back and get authority for the grant agreements and any associated local match as those come in.
That sound right, Larry?
All right.
Yep.
Any discussion?
Yeah.
Mr. Wild?
Thank you. Ethan, some time ago, we talked about, a reserve for matches,
Yes.
right? And I'm just curious, what's the total match to the county if we were able to score each and every one of these grants?
It depends because we're still scoping some of the projects. And it depends which partner we're doing. Let's see, 55. Yeah, at rough estimate, 800,000 to $1 million, depending on the culvert project. The nice part about this year is that we are able to access the bond that we have for culverts to match funds.
I just think it would be wise for us to think about putting together some kind of reserve, because these grants provide us with significant funds. And it would be a shame not to be able to grab some more of these grants because we just didn't have the money for it. So hopefully we can move forward with that sometime soon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But oh, by the way, I'd also like that, it would have been nice to see the full list.
Yes. I'll call the question. All in favor of resolution request number 3, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries. Number 4, closing out 3 different accounts, 76 through 78.
Strictly administrative, closing out old CDBG projects that we completed.
You got a first by Supervisor Wild and a second by Supervisor Stroh. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. Number 5, apply for grant funding via the Access to Home program.
Simple request to apply for home rehab funds. We anticipate working with a local not-for-profit community partner to help administer this one.
Somebody like to make a motion to bring that to the floor, Mr. Wild and Mr. Bean on the second. Any discussion?
And just can we move both because they're both related to housing?
You like that, Mr. Bean?
Yep.
Any discussion on moving number 5 and 6? I'll call the question. All in favor of approving number 5 and number 6, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And those carry. Project updates.
Well, the first, I know I'm sort of running long on time here, but just a big thank you to everyone in this committee and everyone who's been involved with the county comprehensive plan over the past 2 years. It was a lot of work for everyone that was paying attention and participating, and it was adopted last week. So we're really happy that you've moved to adopt it, and we're using the plan, and it's really going to be important as we go after these funding sources. So thank you all on that one. I'm going to hold off on some of the larger project updates until perhaps next committee meeting, unless Sarah, you have anything you need to bring forward. Taking a lot of airtime here. Any questions about any of the ongoing projects that we have, whether it's the housing strategy?
When do you think the housing task force would meet next?
Anticipating like a late July meeting. We've made some nice progress in terms of work. Sarah and I worked with Don Lehman on one of the communication and education strategies of trying to get the word out about the housing issues, just general awareness of it. Then a lot of our work on the housing topic is through these grants, like these infrastructure grants and like the land use regulation updates. That's like that key foundational thing that we need for housing. So that's where a lot of our work in housing is going this past month, the next few weeks. But yeah, like late July, early August, next meeting.
Mr.
I
Casino.
just want to thank you for your efforts on helping us with the gross project. It's important to the whole county really. So thanks for hanging in there with it.
Yeah, no, that's a great project. Thank you.
Anything else from the Planning and Community Development Department? Jim Siplin's here, president of EDC Warren County. He was going to speak during public comment, but he is listed in discussion items.
Yeah.
So here we go. Some updates related to recent events.
Yeah, very quick. First of all, that was a massive list on the grants, but that's not unusual right now. When we had the CFA workshop a couple of weeks ago, we have had trouble getting double-digit number of people to engage over the last several years. We had more than 50 people who actually attended the event. I think we had significant outreach for many others. So I think this signals part of it is the shifting environment where many federal funds are either in flux or there's questions about it, and people are exploring other ways to solve problems. But the business interest in the CFA program was as robust as we've seen in 5 years. I anticipate there will be a number of applications. In fact, Finch, which was discussed here, has one actively in front of the CREDC right now. So this work that the planning department's doing in alignment with the things that we're doing, I think is as important as anything that's going on. Also, you mentioned Queensbury and the CTE. We've actually engaged more than 150 of those same students. We were at their campus twice. They actually came to the EDC as a field trip twice, which I find stunning, but was also really fun. The school district in Queensbury, I think, is particularly aggressive about trying to figure out ways to help their students adapt to a changing workplace. And anything we can do to support them, I think, has been really effective. Since we last met, we've actually submitted a grant, and we didn't have any opportunity to engage this process because the state gave us less than 2 weeks from the time they announced it to the time that it had to be submitted. It's a Connect All grant where the state has essentially repositioned some of the broadband funds that were not able to be utilized so that they could potentially be expended before they expire. And it's specifically focused at expanding cellular outreach and capacity. 2 components. One would be additional service area. That's very difficult to serve and requires the purchase of a lot of equipment and a lot of agreements in terms of land use, and an overlay in terms of additional capacity in places where you might already have cell service, but it's problematic at different peak times. We submitted a $2 million grant on behalf of primarily Lake George Village and the city center of Glens Falls, but with the county support. I don't know exactly. We've gotten no feedback from the time we submitted that last week, but I would like to thank the county, and in particular, John Taflin, for jumping in with us as quickly as we could to figure out how we could do this. If we're successful, there will be an overlay that will provide 200 to 300% of cellular capacity in those 2 locations. We believe it's compliant. We believe it's in the spirit of much of the same work we've been doing. The last thing I wanted to tell you is we've talked a lot about different grants and different things that are going on, in particular in North Creek. But I think it's really important to give you continued feedback because the county made the unprecedented move of backing the public infrastructure project for the wastewater system in North Creek. And the whole goal of this was to try to catalyze development in the corner of our county that represents the greatest potential upside value to us. Since we've seen you last, and I know that Supervisor Bean will share this as well with you in other ways, but the sewer is under construction in North Creek, and you can tell because people are complaining about the fact that the streets are tore up. But it is in full motion. And since that time, the LDC has already approved a loan for the developer that's associated with the old Copperfields, which will soon be known as something else. It's Weekender Hotels, which currently runs the only other establishment that's in the city center. $100,000 loan, which is the first loan that the LDC has issued in a number of years. But the most important part was the fact that they've already secured more than $2 million worth of outside funding and have begun the work. So there was a full IDA grant or a full IDA application and approval process, and now an LDC loan, and the work is underway. It should be available at least in part by later this year. And that property not only portends to hire as many as 20 people and support significant amount of tourist revenue, but it also, part of their plan is to provide the assets, particularly the recreational assets of the facility, to the community. All of this was sitting in essentially suspense until the wastewater treatment plant was able to move forward, because they could not do what they're doing without it. Additionally, yesterday with Supervisor being in North Creek, we met with somebody who is proposing a distillery in North Creek, and they've begun the planning process. This is exactly what we were after, and oftentimes does not show up as quickly as it's showing up here. But I want to thank you as a county for being bold enough to recognize the opportunity and for standing up for something that's not only going to deliver value for us, but is going to transform that community. The last thing I would simply say is that we've gotten an inordinate amount of interest in housing. We continue to work with your planning group on all of this, but I would say somewhere between 20 and 30% of the inquiries that we now receive that are business related are from developers who are either exploring what we need or people who are looking to figure out how they could engage in housing development throughout the county, not solely in Glens Falls and Queensbury. We've supported a number of ventures in the outer county right now that could potentially materialize in the various town processes. And if anybody has any need for that kind of engagement with us to figure out not only what's happening, but how we might encourage more of it in your community, we're always available. Thank you.
Can I just follow up on that? Yeah, so the company that was in yesterday, I'm not gonna name names. They've purchased 7 properties so far. Small privately held company out of New Jersey. Their net worth is somewhere in the vicinity of $2 billion. And they are looking at doing a lot inside the hamlet of North Creek, which candidly, it excites me beyond, this is really great stuff for the town of Johnsburg.
Other comments by the committee? Comments from the public? Motion to adjourn. Mr. Bean, Mr. Wild, all in favor, say aye.